Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I'm here reporting live from the AFL-CIO convention, and I'm talking with Gene Bruskin. He's the director of the Smithfield campaign for the United Food and Commercial Workers Union. Now, Smithfield Packing Plant is in southeastern North Carolina, and you have a whole campaign devoted to exposing them. Is that right? Now, where is it? What does it do?
It's in Tar Heel, North Carolina, which is in a rural area in the southeastern part of the state. They have 5,500 workers in this plant. It's the largest pork processing plant in the world. They kill 32,000 hogs a day. 1,000 an hour come by when you're on the shift. And the work is brutal, the speed line is unforgiving, and the company is in totally denying the respect, dignity, and human rights of its employees, and has been for more than a dozen years. So
workers are working basically on the assembly line, chop off the pig's feet or head and everything.
It's a kill plant.
It's a kill plant. Now, I'm one of those that reads those old books. I remember Upton Sinclair, The Jungle, it was a meat processing plant. And in fact, Upton Sinclair was one of the founders of the labor movement and talked about organizing, and I remember people were worried that their hands were going to get chopped off. Specifically, what is going on that is harmful to workers in this plant?
Okay. Well, ironically, you mentioned Upton Sinclair. It's 100 years of the anniversary of the writing of The Jungle. And I just reread it recently. And I must say it was painful because of how familiar it is right now.
Still,
in Tar Heel, North Carolina.
The same abuses. I mean, I remember the Lithuanian immigrants. I read this book years ago, but you know, one of them could get their hand chopped off. Right. They would have no vacation time. They had to work 6 days a week. Right. Specifically, what's going on in the Smithfield plant?
Well, you have, if you think about it, when you have 1,000 pigs coming by every hour, right? And whatever your role is on the line, let's say it's a cut or a chop or that kind of a maneuver, because you're cutting up the pig as it goes down the assembly line. You're doing that
repetitive
1,000
motion.
pigs an hour.
Yeah.
Right. So you have frequently rotator cuff injuries, all kinds of what they call carpal tunnel, repetitive stress injuries, where your body just essentially, all the joints just essentially decay. You've got lots and lots of back injuries. A lot of slipping is not unusual. What happens is that when you start cut pieces of meat fall on the floor, and you have a wet, cold floor or a wet, hot floor, and you step on a piece of meat, it's very dangerous. People pull the meniscus on their knees.
Well, Gene,
then you got cuts. Yeah. Then you're working with really
real knives, and you get.
And just to give you a sense of how scary it is to be up there with these really sharp knives, we had one woman that came into our office who told us that she was more than 8 months pregnant. She's still working on the line, and she said that she's afraid because her supervisor has been intimidating her. She's afraid to take off the rest of the time for her pregnancy. And she said the line speed is so fast that the day before she had come into our office, the day before, one of the people wasn't there on the line, and they're working with these knives, and the guy next to her almost hit her in the stomach.
Wow. Now, Gene, let me ask you this. One of your complaints, I assume the main complaint about the Smithfield Packing Plant, is they're not unionized.
Right. And
they don't allow union to organize there?
This company is union in Iowa. It's union in Kansas. It's union in Ohio.
But not in North Carolina.
North Carolina, they have fought for a dozen years. They have violated the National Labor Relations Act in innumerable instances by doing things like beating people up, threatening them with deportation, threatening to close the plant, spying on them. There's a list of violations a mile long.
Well, let me ask you this. They are unionized in other places. There are pork processing plants that are unionized. Right. How does a union shop, doing the same stuff, still cutting the pigs, still providing it, how do they treat their workers better? What happens in a union shop to prevent a person from getting those same repetitive injuries? How, in other words, how could it be improved?
Right.
What would be different?
Good question. Look, working in say a pork kill plant or a hog plant or something, it's hard work.
Sure, in any shop, union or non-union.
When you pile on top of that the absolute lack of respect and dignity that you get in a non-union plant becomes unbearable. In a union plant, you have a signed contract. That contract gives you the right, for example, if you are unfairly accused or mistreated in any way, to have your day in court. You can have a meeting with your supervisor and have a shop steward there. Most of unions have health and safety committees and health and safety languages that is legally binding on the company because they've signed the contract that says that you have to conduct the plant in such and such a ways, otherwise we have certain rights.
So does that mean that some guy wouldn't have to do the same repetitive injury for an hour? He might do this for an hour and then do something else for an hour, something like that?
It might mean that he has language that allows him to rotate to different jobs, might mean more frequent breaks. It might mean that the line speed could be something that the union could have an impact on in their health and safety meetings and say, no, you're speeding up the line, slow it down, you're making us work too hard. And it might mean, for example, something as basic as the right to go to the bathroom. When you have a pregnant woman standing on a line, not allowed to go to the bathroom without the supervisor's permission, and frequently denied that right, then you really have all kinds of problems and indignities going on.
And she's afraid that she can't quit the job, have her baby, and come back because her job won't be there when she comes back?
Well, they pretty much tell you that in many cases. One of the most outrageous things that goes on in the plant, and we're about to release a documented health and safety report on Labor Day to give evidence to this from government records, that frequently the injury rate is going up dramatically in the plant. And what we hear repeatedly when we talk to workers is they're afraid to report the injury, because if they report the injury, they potentially will get an argument from the boss, who will regularly say, how do we know that this problem you're having now with your wrist was caused at work? Maybe it happened last night by something you did at home. And then if a worker persists...
But there's worker compensation laws, there's the Family Medical and Leave Act. There are laws on the book that are supposed to protect workers.
Absolutely.
Do you think this company is in violation of the law?
I believe that to be the case.
So is it going to be a lawsuit, or...
Well, we are...
call the ACLU, right? Won't they help you?
We believe that this is a regular occurrence because workers, unrelated to each other, tell us this on a regular basis. What happens in the plant a lot is that you come to the company with an injury, that they send you to their clinic. The clinic may or may not treat it adequately, but then the company doesn't sign you up as a work-related injury. Therefore, you are expected to come back to work. If you take time off, you're not covered under the workers' compensation law except for a very short period of time. So they will try to skirt the law or deny it, and in some cases people actually get fired for insisting on it.
Do you know, will there be a lawsuit, a class action, anything coming out of this?
Well,
I'm a lawyer, so I tend to think in legal terms.
Well, we believe that coming out of this health and safety report and the documentation we have, that there should definitely be legal action taken.
Now, you told us that the Smithfield plant in Iowa and Kansas, some other places, was unionized. Presumably these abuses don't happen in those plants. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yeah.
So why is North Carolina? Is it the state? Why is this particular plant being so difficult when the rest of the company's plants are apparently decent operations?
Well, it has to do with the sort of the way the company developed as a corporation. They developed by acquiring plants primarily, so many of their plants around the country, for the most part, were other companies like John Morrell, Gwaltney. They had other names. They'd been union for decades. They bought them, they kept the union. In 1992, they opened the mother of all plants on their own in North Carolina, and that's this one.
Now, have the workers had an opportunity to even vote on whether to have a union there?
Well, it depends on what you consider an opportunity. There was an election in 1994, shortly after the...
12 years ago?
Yeah, and it was a very close election, and the board, the National Labor Relations Board, found some charges against the company. And the company... Charges
like manipulating the voting, that kind of stuff?
Or violations of the Labor Act, which are like various kinds of intimidation and so on. And the company then met with the union and basically signed a letter of agreement to conduct this next election fairly. In 1997, an election was conducted, and during that election, the labor violations went through the roof. They surrounded the vote with deputy sheriffs with rifles. They beat people up right at the board at the conclusion of the vote in front of the National Labor Relations Board.
Well, they beat people up in front of the board?
Yeah, they arrested some people. They fired people.
And members of the board were there and saw this?
Well, some of that, the beating up, they were right there. It was right there as the vote was concluded. So we then filed charges and repeatedly, both under the Clinton and then under the Bush Labor Board, found every single charge that we held, and there were dozens and dozens of them, to be true, using racial slurs, all that kind of stuff. And then the company appealed it to the U.S. Court of Appeals. And in 2006 of April, after 9 years of appeals, after having promised from the previous election to do the right thing, the Labor Board said, the company said, okay, we won't appeal it anymore. Let's vote tomorrow. But
vote tomorrow on whether to have a union?
We're ready to vote, yeah.
So are you going to hold an election?
Well, it's sort of like if you've polluted the waters so seriously and drastically for more than a decade.
People are scared now.
It's laughable for the company to say that they're going to respect the rights of workers, because since the '97 election, they have repeatedly violated the National Labor Relations Act in other instances. So they have no credibility. What happened is that starting after the union went through all these years of appeals, starting in June of 2006, the union began a national campaign, and that's where you referred to in the beginning, where we are going across the country and telling consumers that Smithfield products are packaged with abuse. We've had our stories in the Wall Street Journal, in the New York Times, in the Chicago Tribune, in Latino. And
now what are Smithfield products? I mean, our listeners should know what they shouldn't buy.
Okay. Well, the products that come out of this plant.
Name them. Let's get it on there.
Like the Lean Generation products.
So Lean Generation is a company.
Smithfield Lean Generation.
All right. Packaged with abuse.
Packaged with abuse.
What else?
Anything that says Smithfield Bacon on it, which is a huge product.
Smithfield Bacon, packaged with abuse.
Was killed in that plant. Then, for the most part, any of the products that actually say Smithfield on it, as opposed to one of their other companies, were produced in this plant.
How do you know? I mean, you don't want to hurt the union shop in Iowa and Kansas. Couldn't
question.
They be Smithfield products? I mean, it's kind of tough.
Here's the way we know. We know the names of the products, right? And if you go to our website, www.smithfieldjustice.com, you can see the names. But the way we know for sure is that under the USDA, Department of Agriculture rules, everything that comes out of the plant has to be stamped with a number. And if it says 18079,
18079,
then it came out of that
18079, packaged with abuse.
79C on the bacon. That pig was killed in that plant.
People aren't going to remember that. 18079, 79C.
But mostly what you have to do is look on if you look at the name of it says Smithfield on it, it's probably out of that plant.
You know what? I'm going to put that on my website.
Plants
frequently
say Gwaltney or John Morrell or the other names of the product.
I will post that on my website so people can find out. So tell me this, when does the campaign end? I assume you're doing this campaign because it's one of the worst companies in the nation. Is that fair to say? When does it end? They say they're going to have an election. What do they have to do to satisfy you that they're coming around treating the workers well?
Well, that's a good question. First of all, they have to stop the daily abuse. We have to see some real signs right in front of the workers' faces. The injury denials, the disrespect and the insult, the sexual harassment on the job, and so on. Most importantly, though, they have a relationship with this union. We represent 13,000 or more of their workers around the country. They deal with us every day. They could sit down with this union anytime, work out a fair process for the workers to choose to have a union contract without any intimidation or interference on the company's part.
So are y'all picketing the place now, or?
Well, it's not really a picket.
You don't stand out there with signs.
No, workers are working. They got to work, right? But for example, 2 weeks ago, 1,000 workers inside the plant wore this T-shirt to work to announce to the company on a single day.
That's a scary thing for those workers, because they'd be afraid of. I wouldn't know if I'd want to wear one of those.
Took a lot of
risk
courage,
my job.
Total defiance. We're talking also a plant that's probably about maybe 45% or so Latino, about 40% or more African American. These are groups that frequently don't work together,
but they're working together now on this.
In this case, they're all wearing their T-shirts because they're all suffering this abuse.
Gene Bruskin, thank you for coming here on the Inside Scoop.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. We'll be right back with more of the Inside Scoop right after this. But take a look, if you can, at Gene Bruskin's T-shirt, Justice at Smithfield at www.smithfieldjustice.com. You can find more information on it and know what pork products you shouldn't be buying because they're packaged with abuse. We'll be right back, as I said, with the Inside Scoop right after this.
Dead on. All right, hey.